Hey everyone, this is Jenna from Leg Up Coaching, and this is part of our Empowered Equestrian series where I bring people to you that I find, that Callie finds, that the whole horse class team finds out in the world who are doing extraordinary things. And we love bringing them to you, sharing their stories so that you can learn new viewpoints, learn new techniques, and when we hear someone's story, there's always a gem to be learned. So today I'm so excited to bring Gloria Hester to the screen. Hi, Gloria.
Hi, Jenna. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. So everyone who's watching, just know this, that I called Gloria up weeks ago and we were soul sisters like that. Like I loved her immediately. Our conversation was fun. You know how some people you just talk to and you feel like you've been friends for 20 years. That's who you were to me, Gloria.
Thank you, Jenna. I felt the same. I'm really excited to share with you and with your listeners and with your community and for them and their horses. So, abs-
Absolutely. So I won't talk about us because we're already friends. We'll get right to the horses. So to have you know a little bit more about who Gloria is, Gloria, let me start with where did you grow up and were horses a part of your childhood so we can sort of get your back history?
yeah, thank you for asking. And Jenna, I just want to say I was so grateful when we had the call that day that it did feel so easy and so natural because I've heard this expression and you may have heard this, how we do one thing is how we do everything.
Mhm.
And
I
so
say that to my children.
yes. So I felt like it's like, "Oh, this feels so good," because that is just the essence of one of the things that I feel like I wanna experience in this life, and I want the horses to get to experience that, and their people to get to experience that. So I know that when we have this conversation, it's the same. And so that just felt really good to me. I was very grateful for that. So having said that, I you may hear by my accent, I grew up in the southeast of the
I
states.
love your accent.
Thank you. I grew up in Alabama. The Tennessee River runs through the state, and so I grew up on the Tennessee River and was really blessed. And I feel like the universe knew it's like I'm going to send her here into this family. So my mom had grown up with horses. She was very her whole life was horses, and so from the time she was a child. And I even have pictures of my great grandmother on her horse, which is really lovely. It's like in the 1920s, and so it's just a beautiful image to have. But I just love being in the barn and being with the horses and just being around them and just being with them. And I think because I was so young, I didn't know that they were any different than me, really, when it came down to it. Because when we're that young, when we're pre-verbal, we don't everything in our environment is us, and we are what's in our environment. So I feel like that part of it was just really nice for me and, to get to have that early life experience like that way. Um, my mom had ridden until she was 9 months pregnant with me, and then with her doctor's permission, he's like, "No he probably knew she wouldn't do what he said anyway." So,
Might as well
very
give her permission.
yes, very independent. So, and then I think she said that when I was 2 days old, she had me, she sat me up on the horse. So from that young age, I wouldn't have known that I was separate from them, which is really nice to have, with the way, life has seen that I was gonna be with the horses in a certain way. So I think it served that purpose. I loved to ride. I loved to swim the horses in the river, because it was just right there. So I was very much just in the woods a lot and that kind of thing too. And, um, it felt really good. And then, of course, um, the, the broader world and all the preconditioned ideas of the world, I have to say that was kind of abrupt for me, having been in nature so much and with horses so much. So when I was expected to go be in school and stuff like that, it was a little abrupt. So
You were a wild child out in the fields. I can picture that.
absolutely. Yes, very much so. And so that just felt really good to me. And and just to be and there were 50 something horses on the place at that time. So there were a lot of horses to be with. And my mom was a trainer, and so she gave lessons and all the things, and so but I was just like, I just wanted to go be in the woods with the horse or go to the lake with the horse or that kinda thing, and so, it And I would sneak and get makeup and put makeup on the horses and stuff like that, so I have to be honest.
So cute. Alright, so right from the start, you were really one with the horse. It was that's a special relationship. As you got older, did you train with your mom? Did it
I
change for
did.
you?
I did, and, that was I would be around when lessons were happening or when new horses were coming in and going out and things like that, so I was always around, but it did change because if there were expectations, like, for example, in the show ring, if you when you're working with a horse to train, you ask for certain cues and you wanna be very clear, and so when I was on the horse and I would say, "Well, what if she doesn't want to?" Or what if she doesn't feel good? The horse, what if the
Right,
horse
right.
doesn't want to? What if the horse doesn't feel good? Which would kinda drive my mom crazy as a trainer. She'd be like, "Okay, just get off the horse," you know? Like, so I think it was just my nature, my just my how I came here. So, because not everybody's gonna think that way or be that way, and that's fine, and, it really is. It's just I think it's just the differences in people, but for whatever reason, that was my tendency.
That was your path from the beginning.
Yes.
Okay, so you're that way, say, through your teen years, and then how did what t show us the path how you became into the coaching that became your life. But I
Yeah.
see it now. Now I see the seed was planted from you came out like that, so
Yeah,
I get who
very
you
much
are
so.
now. But
Yes.
how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, well, for years, I had sometimes, like, as we grow up, other things come onto our radar, we have other expectations of what we're supposed to be doing in the world, and so there were several years, probably maybe, like, about 6 years where I wasn't really, having, regular connections with horses at all, although there were still horses on the property and that kinda thing, but I was doing other things, just kinda off into other things, and I had some injuries, and those injuries really honestly led me back into to horses. Interestingly enough, it it was this serendipitous thing between me having heard somewhere back in the day that yoga was good for low back injuries. I had pelvic injuries and low back injuries. They were not horse related injuries, but I was, trying to heal these injuries, and so I started to study yoga on my own as a healing art. And I came across a body of work by Thomas Hanna, who I eventually became very close with. His widow, Eleanor, she's, on her own, has been a wonderful influence in my life in countless ways. And, but it was my yoga therapy teachers. I had come across Tom's book and I found it really fascinating. And so, his work at the time was written for humans. And interestingly enough, he thought that back in the day that work could not be applied to animals. He thought that animals didn't have enough of a frontal cortex, somatic education, but it turns out they do. And so, it that was quickly I was kinda integrated into this path of somatic education and yoga therapy, and I was studying both at the same time. Um, but it was, very much the horse work that brought me to it because I was so very much as a yoga teacher and yoga therapist wanting to bring Tom's work into the mainstream for yoga therapists. I was like, why don't yoga teachers know about this? And so I was sharing with my students principles that are very different from the field of yoga, but I was sharing those with my yoga students. And then when I went to study with my yoga therapy teachers, there was a moment where something was shared with me about the horse work that, the universe was like dropping breadcrumbs absolutely the whole time. And what I was learning in yoga therapy, I would come home and I would work. I had a dog that was 17 at the time. Her name was Nikki. And I would take what I was learning in yoga therapy and apply it to my dog, Nikki. And she really loved it. And so then I kind of would talk with my vet about what I was doing. And my vet was like, yes, keep doing this, so it became this thing of, watching this process evolve, and so even now, sometimes for animals, I will create little restorative postures for them to support their bodies as they get older, to help to help them, to give them comfort and, to help them feel supported so that their nervous system can experience what that feels like, and, so it's almost like restorative yoga therapy for dogs, Yeah. So sometimes I just, I think, Eleanor said, she said, your mind is not limited, your mind is expanded. So I think that's part of it for me is that I wasn't limiting myself about what I thought was possible for an animal, uh, especially like, for example, with the therapeutic yoga poses. For a dog. Um, I haven't done any postural support for horses because it's, 1,200 pounds, so it's a different kind of thing. But having said that, there are times when I know I can either show that horse's person, help them learn how to. There have been times when I could absolutely feel that the horse that horse understood how to yield and could yield into some support, even though, I'm a little person. I'm not, but it's just a way to convey information really through our sensory system and through our motor system.
Okay,
Have
so let's
gone
stop there for
completely off the
right. So I need to back it up for
Yes,
everybody
back it
'cause,
up. Yes.
if I have questions, they have
Yes.
questions. So let's back all the way up to somatic coaching.
Yeah.
So some people are gonna go, "I heard yoga, but then she switched gears." So can
Yeah,
you
thank you.
share yeah, help us
Yes,
there.
okay. Yeah, thank you, because I see
You
those.
know all this, so it's
I
secondhand. We're just like, "What? Tell us more."
really appreciate you. Thank you for helping guide me through making something has so many wonderful possibilities in the experience between a horse and a human, and even if you have a canine, but I see those words somatic and yoga to me, I feel like they're very interchangeable in my world and the way I work. So it makes sense that I would have said that the way I did. But thank you for kind of I'll back it up. So we want to offer a being, whether that's us as a human or an animal, any vertebrate animal, an opportunity to sense through their sensory motor system with no force and no discomfort at all, and no expectation that they're gonna be stretched in any way either. That's very important. So and that's one reason some yoga practitioners and students and teachers of yoga, that's one reason they'll end up with injuries.
Mhm.
They're hurting themselves, but they don't know they're hurting themselves. So it's kind of this mystery thing that starts happening in their body. They don't know they don't know that it's something they're doing that's causing it.
So, can I
Mm,
stop there? So,
mhm.
does that mean to a layperson, I do a yoga pose and I push it too hard and I stretch something too much, then
Yes.
I get that okay. I think that's very common because we're all so not even competitive, but you're trying so hard. I
Right,
think that's
yes,
a common thing. Okay. So, in your practice, you're
very common,
trying to
yes,
not do that.
right, and especially with the animal because we want the animal to experience the side that they are bending toward, and the same is true for you, so in your practice, when you go in to do your yoga practice, you
Mhm.
can put your awareness on what you're feeling on the side that you're shortening on purpose or the side that you're bending toward on purpose, and that way you won't be creating a lot of, these tendencies, so it's over time that it can happen for a horse or for a person. So anything that we do habitually, we do develop habituations is the word we could say we develop a habituation. And so we want to always be working with once we have a good motor plan, that's great, but we don't want it to become like we're in a state of amnesia with it because once it gets to that point, and that's pretty common in all of us as vertebrate animals, once it gets to that point, it means that we've got some limitation for the other possibility, whatever that is. I'll give you a pragmatic example. If there's a horse that is being asked to run barrels, for example, say they're a barrel racer,
Mhm.
and they run a set pattern over and over, they will develop certain habituations
Mm.
because of that
Common.
pattern. Mhm. So
Right.
we wanna be able to have that horse work with that muscle group as well as the opposing muscle group so that they have all the potential that they had when they started.
Got it. Not only the potential that they've developed doing the figure eight.
That's right.
Okay,
Yes.
I can understand everyone. That's a good sign.
Yes, yes, keep pulling me back, Jenna, because I tend to get very,
No, I love all your concepts, but yes, one concept at a time.
yeah, no, it's very important because I know that I can go kind of, I got it's like, you can know something, but we have to be able to ground it right in a way that is very
Build our foundation. We're coming with you.
yes, yeah.
Okay. So you're balancing, you're building both sides, and that applies to people, horses, any vertebrae
Yes.
being. Got it.
So, for example, as a rider, you may have maybe someone has a riding instructor, and their instructor is always asking them, to do some certain thing over and over. And the person thinks, well, I think I am doing that, or I'm trying to do that. That's an example of not having a motor plan for what the instructor's asking you to do.
Mm.
So the instructor's seeing what they're seeing or knowing what they're knowing, and they're doing their best to convey it to the rider, but the rider doesn't always get it for whatever reason. Usually that's because it's outside of that person's awareness in that moment. And what I mean by that could be that maybe if they have a seat that's naturally a very forward seat, well, that is a somatic organization, if you will. They tend to be organized in their soma that way. So if you work with that rider and you help them find their own neutral again, and also help them find more of what we might think of as more of a Western seat. Some people just naturally have more of a Western seat. That too is somewhat of a somatic way of it's the way they're naturally organized. So it's easy for them because it's what they've always done. So they may not be able to go across disciplines very easily, or they may, it just depends. But it can be an example of, maybe if you're asking to have softer hands, but they're trying to have softer hands, but their muscle spindle fibers are excited, and that makes them have very tense hands. And that gets stored in the cerebellum, which is the low brain, and it's stored as a habituation. And so that part of the brain is not voluntary. That part of the brain isn't conscious. So they literally, as much as they might want to, they can't. They
Got it.
literally don't have access. It's until you can get the cerebellum to release the control and give it back to the frontal cortex.
Okay.
So that's
Is that
where
the foundation of somatic?
it is. Yes.
I get it. I totally get it.
Yes,
So, I mean, lights are going off everywhere. So if you apply that to a horse has his habitual way, and you're asking him to do something else, but it might not work. So the somatic part of all of this is helping get the horse, I guess, first to more of a neutral place and then to the place that you want.
yes, absolutely. The place that they can find easily.
Right.
That may be, yes. So when we ask a horse to do a movement, and I had made some notes before our call because I realized when you and I are having this conversation and people or your listeners hear it, they may be in their car, they may be at their desk, they may be cooking dinner, they may be at the barn, just wherever they are. But I wanted to give something that I felt like anyone can do with their horse that will start to help develop more of a somatic relationship for you and your horse. And it will make everything easier for your horse to do. So yes, like if a horse needs to be able to cross over behind, which is a natural movement just an example, if they need to be able to cross over behind, and they've lost the ability to do that, working with your horse somatically will help your horse regain that ability really easily. And then that's accessible again as a natural pattern that your horse had before but had lost. And we lose it due to adaptations. So it could be the way that the horse is being ridden. It could be the way that the horse is being worked. It could be something that happened when they were being hauled or when they're being, maybe when they're with their farrier. There's just countless things that can create a
Mhm.
level of limitation like that, where it gets stored as a habituation, or we could also say a compensation. It's funny. I'm wanting to give you so many years worth of knowledge in this conversation.
Right. You
So,
only
uh,
starter stuff, and then everyone can come to you.
yes,
This
yes. So,
makes so much sense though, because you think about our horses get in these patterns, and then as a rider, or even liberty work, you can get frustrated because you can't get the result you want. But it sounds like this training is a missing step for many of us.
Absolutely, yes, because, what you're feeling, your horse is feeling it too. And
Mhm.
so, some horses, for example, they can get very tight along their top line. They may have a tendency to nose out, for example, when a horse noses out. And so that just becomes stored as the resting length of the muscle group that's pulling your horse into that position. So
Got it.
we don't want to stretch those muscles. We want your horse to voluntarily contract and slowly release.
Got
And
it.
it has to be ideally it's differentiated for your horse's brain. And so it's differentiated, meaning we make it very, very, very simple for you and for your horse to be able to feel so that your brain can relearn about how what the resting length of that muscle can be. And then we work with the posing muscle group. So it's always working with what feels easier first. And
Mhm.
so I feel like this approach is so beautiful for the fact that the coaching aspect of it, because I work with a lot of people who don't even have a horse. It's the coaching aspect of it, Jenna, that is the embodiment practice, is that we want to go with what feels easy. So if we feel any resistance, we literally stop. And that's the part where I think I was naturally tapping into, for example, when I was 12 with my mare, when I would say, well, what if she doesn't feel like it? Right. Or what if she doesn't want to? So I
You were
just,
tapped into her,
yes,
right? Okay.
yes. And that I think that's just would have been a natural thing, and I've had conversations about this with different people who are in this arena who have a deep knowledge base in this. And they're like, well, part of it's your DNA, part of it's your life experience, because I think that's really interesting because we're all very different. And
Right.
we're all
We
the
can
same.
all apply this.
We all can apply it. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And so it'll be a learning technique for you to work with your horse. So, example, if your horse was a horse who had a shorter top line or a tighter top line, and you'll see that because your horse might have a tendency to hold their head a little higher all the time, or they might have a tendency to nose out more than, it's not going to be easy for them to be vertical, at from their forehead to their nose, which I'm not a big person on positions, but I understand that a lot of horse people and riders, that's gonna give people a visual of kind of what this is in a way that will help them find which direction is their horse already going.
Mhm.
And here's the thing that I think is so beautiful that we can bring into all areas of our life is that we want to go with that tendency because that's the known and understood easy way to go. So that is where you're working in cooperation. You're not coming in to dominate your horse. You are creating a conversation that says, let's do this, let's do it a little bit more, and then let's slowly release. And that slow release is very, very important because this is not like massage where, massage is relaxing, but it's not a learning process for your horse, where this is a learning process for your horse. And
So it's a
so
long-term result. It's not like
it's a
massage is a release,
that's right.
then it's done. This is long-term.
That's right, and I've seen horses observe sessions, and then they would start to do their own work. They would watch, and then they would start to do their own work, and then I've seen horses that I would work with, and I would see that horse a week later, and he would show me everything we did, and he was a horse that we worked with over a 3-day retreat. And so he was a horse with a group that we were, working with. And he showed me every movement we did in sequential order. And
Right.
he kept his head turned to look to say, do you see
See,
what
Jenna.
yes, do you see? And so it was, these moments in time that I think about through the history of this work are just they're really priceless. And that to me is like the part that means so much to me is and I feel like, the horses share it with each other, like the other horses that see it, and because they have their own way that they're herd animals, and so they have their
They
ways that they
communicate.
yes, and, so it's like that beautiful process to recognize, that the it may be the first time a horse has ever had an experience where they have this experience where they're like, "Oh, this person, they're feeling what I'm feeling." So, yes, anyone absolutely can do it. And I have had people who I would go to work with them in a group of with horses, and some people I would ask them to visualize the movement for their horse because their horse was more receptive to that than hands-on work. So for some people, it can be a visual process, and you want to look for certain you wanna look for certain, feedback from your horse. And so it could be that you touch your horse and you feel, "Do my horse's muscles feel softer?" Or it could be that you see your horse actively relaxing, that you see them actively start to just stand more in a more easeful way. And the first time I ever saw a horse completely allow their ears to relax down onto the side of their head.
Did the owner just cry? I watched one of your testimonial videos and I was completely in tears. So at the end, when everyone finds out how to reach you, I recommend watching testimonials because I mean, you're obviously so passionate and it's your thing, but to see people experience what you're talking about on their horse is just heart, squeezing.
Thank you for mentioning that, Jenna. I know for years people would say, "Why aren't you videoing these retreats?" And I was like, "Well, the horse can feel that the camera's here, and I don't want to be concerned about whether or not, like, just all the things, right? Is my cleavage showing or just these weird things, that you worried about."
Video changes everything, but the capturing those moments for people, for other people to understand,
For
that
sure.
that's a big deal. Um,
Yes, it's
so the next question I wrote down that I know nothing about, am I saying it correctly? Is it the SIVA method or SEVA?
Seva, Seva,
SEVA. Can you
Seva.
explain what the SEVA method is and how that combines with your work?
Thank you for asking. So I feel like Seva is a container for those who've been studying with me for a long time. And for people who are coming in who I've been working with their horses or they've reached out to me and we work via Zoom and things like that. And it's a container and a place to learn and grow and evolve with your horse and with other vertebrate animals too. So most cases we're working with canines and equines, but there's definitely space for other species in within SEVA, and that's why I chose to call it SEVA, because I do work non-locally with animals as well. I've worked with cats non-locally, worked with humans that have brain injuries non-locally, and so SEVA is a place to develop your existing developmental awareness, whether you're an acupuncturist or a massage therapist or a Reiki person or a yoga therapist or any of those modalities, or just someone who has a heart, honestly, someone who has a heart who wants to learn and maybe they have a horse that they love. And so it's, my background, I started training yoga teachers it's been forever, a long time now. And I was always bringing them to be with the horses because I know there's so much potential there to learn and grow and evolve. Because we are all, as vertebrate animals, we can learn things across species that I feel like when we're just humans, we are limited in the kind of awareness we get to have when we're working, for example, with horses, because horses are they're going to show us and they're going to tell us in a way that isn't verbal. And so we're working with other parts of our sensory system. So Seva, because my background in yoga, as a child, I was working with my great grandfather with guided relaxation and yoga nidra, and he would ask me to do that for him. No one ever taught me to do it. So it's kind of wild. All those years later, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like that."
Come full circle.
Yes, and so it just is one of those things, that part I think really came naturally to me. The part that didn't come naturally to me that we're doing now is being on camera and being recorded and things like that. That part I was always like, "No," So that
You're
part.
amazing at it, so that's a plus for you.
Well, thank you so much. So for Seva, it's a container for people to come in, sometimes via Zoom, sometimes in person. And you don't have to have horse experience to come into Seva, and any level of Seva that you want to participate on. So sometimes it's like you can save those hours for your continuing ed in whatever field you're in. I've had people come in that way. Acupuncturists, for example, have used it as continuing ed. It really depends on what state they're in and their governing bodies. So sometimes massage therapists, I like for the person if they want to use it for that, they can find out about that before they come because every state is very different. And so, but but
So do you come for a set amount of classes, or how do you come for
yes. So
the
when I first started Seva, it was a 200-hour program, and quite frankly, most people who they usually end up studying beyond that because it's kind of this endless place where, almost like a portal, really, because I realized, just I think it was about a month ago, maybe a little longer than that now, but there was a dog that had had, really traumatic experience for her. And when her people got her back, she was not the same dog. And they were so concerned. And, they were upset by the event. And, so with that animal, I know her and her muscle tonicity. So her resting length of her muscles, she has pretty high tonicity, and I felt like for her, we could just do a round of tapping. So I worked with emotional freedom technique with this canine, and
Mhm.
she did really beautifully, really just came completely back to herself. The light was on in her eyes again. She was just right back to herself again. And I think that, that part of Seva, I knew when I created that container that it would be something where we wouldn't be limited by, um, yes, we are working with somatic principles and we are working with so much more, for the fact that sometimes there might be an energy hold or an energy technique that's going to serve that person.
Mhm.
And that fits really well into the, kind of into the field of yoga therapy because you are working with the meridian body, whether people understand that or not. But it gives a place for yoga nidra. I've had students that teach, and I would teach them to teach yoga nidra, so they would write their own yoga nidra scripts. So for me, it's very much about the person when they come in. What is their vision? What's their dream? What is their goal? And then really supporting them to create that and to really work with what they have to bring.
Mhm.
So
So it's not one method. So that this makes total sense, because when I studied you and I researched you, I had lists, I had columns of things you do. I mean, you really have, I had somatic coach, yoga teacher, body oncologist,
yeah, yeah.
ecologist. I mean, you have so many modalities. So now I understand. So Seva, really, you put it into one platform and people come and you meet them where they're at.
Absolutely, and it really is personal development, and it's beneficial for the horse. So it is very horse-centered. When I first started holding retreats, I was always about, we're bringing people together and they're gonna love it, and, because 'cause we're working with your body too, not only the horse's body, but
Mhm.
it's working from a place of we get to understand through our own bodies, so we have an experience of this. Then we go to be with the horses with that same awareness. And
Right.
so, for example, someone who's not a horse person, they may not be comfortable being in the arena, and that is honored. So they're present, but they are gonna be at that space they're comfortable with. And the same is true for the horses, right? So it may be that we work with the horse that is enjoying this and we're finding a way to work with that horse that works for that horse. And so there are energy practices within it, but it's not I was never a woo-woo person. I mean, I went through a lot to learn the neuroscience language behind what a part of this is. I also didn't I feel like my evolutionary process through my growth was it's okay to that I work with a cat non-locally that I don't have to have a camera for because the owner and the cat, they get it, and the cat is getting the results that the owner and their veterinarian was looking for.
And that's all you need.
Yes. And so
That's really what you need. That's
exactly,
amazing.
yes. Yes.
So you're really both sides of the coin, like, you know the neuroscience and you are the real woo-woo. I mean,
That's
that's the magic, really, isn't that?
It is, and I hid from that part. Jenna, when you said that, I got chills because I hid from that part for so long. I have run from that part of it, but it just isn't.
Right.
I think it's
But you
some
can't run from who you are, like, that's what I see it shining from you, that's truly who you are. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, and that part
And
I was
you know what, Gloria, I think you were that when you were, like, 2. You know?
I think so. I think so. Yes, yes. And so some people coming in as a student because they want to learn, they want to learn. They've seen results with their horse and they're like, I see what you're doing and I want to learn more about that. And they're coming in from that place.
Yeah.
Other people are coming in that have taught yoga for years and they just love being around it and around the work in that way. And they're learning and their bodies are changing and it's when our bodies change, our minds change. And that's another thing I really want to share about the way I like to work. When I first started to study yoga, some of the disciplines I was studying, they were vinyasa style. So they could be really demanding, quite strenuous and very demanding. And that's lovely and it's a wonderful experience to have. And I like to work with people in a um, very relaxed way so that they get to feel the feedback and it's just really easy for them and natural. So I have students who have been one of my, closest students for the longest time. She's been paraplegic since she was 14 years old. And so she doesn't have full use of one side of her body, but she's been a student for a long time. And so it's something that I feel like people, no matter where we are,
Mhm,
we can, we are working with who we are and with our own bodies instead of trying to make our bodies fit a certain way or make our horse's body fit a certain way.
mhm,
We are working truly with where we are. And so it just that's very, very important. And so for example, with the SEVA method, you can work with someone that's in intensive care, literally. They're in a hospital bed and so you can work with people where they are, or with a horse where they are. I've had horse clients who their horse was transitioning. And, during the process of that, recognize how to help the horse find himself within his body so that if he wanted to get up, he could, and he did. And, and
wow.
we, yes.
That gave me goosebumps. Wow,
Not
wow,
to force him to get up, right? Only just to
right,
let him find it and if he wanted to. Because honestly, at the end of it, right, we're eternal. I know we all have different belief systems and that's wonderful. I don't wanna, I feel like our spirit there's part of us that's eternal. So,
right. Well, everything you're saying fits so much into horse class in the container that you're in, because so much is about in this group in Leg Up Coaching, it's personal growth, but one of our main points is that we are not all the same, and we wanna meet people where they're at, and what you're saying really fits that. You're not trying to force everyone to be a certain way. You make it so that with ease, you can really I love talking to people about their potential because everyone's potential is different, and you're just, like, full of the possibility of reach your potential for
yeah,
you.
yeah.
So that just feels beautiful. So just know that just the way you talk about how you teach feels like I could do anything with her. So
Uh-huh.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yes, it's so
Um,
thank you, Jenna.
one of the so body ecologist?
Yes, yes. So I feel like I've been so blessed to have so many phenomenal teachers. And Donna Gates formed a body of work called Body Ecology. And I just felt compelled to do that years ago. And it was such a wonderful thing because Donna, very much like what you just shared, Donna recognizes that everyone's very unique. And so within body ecology, there's something called the principle of uniqueness. And I absolutely brought that into Seva, the principle of uniqueness. Um, and so with it, I was definitely on my own food-based journey, and I actually have a recipe book coming out called Real Food for Real Bodies. Yes.
Yay!
Yes,
Everyone's
and
getting that in Leg Up Coaching.
yes, yeah, and I do wanna mention too, like, my program, I've always called it Yogic Wisdom for Horse and Human because that's just and then Seva was born as because there are other vertebrate animals who are involved in this, and so Yogic Wisdom for Horse and Human doesn't say your cat or your dog or
Right.
But with the principle of uniqueness, I learned that from Donna, and with food-based healing, because our what we put in our bodies, it matters, and so but it's not a one size fits all either, and
Mm.
we change over our lifetime, and so it just inspired me. Another food-based group is the Weston Price Foundation, and that is a wonderful group as well as far as food-based healing, and so when we're thinking about what we're eating and what we are consuming, and when we start to recognize it very much affects our nervous system. And with the yogic background, it's very much part of the Ayurvedic principles. So really, like you said again, it's like I have principles from Ayurveda, principles from body ecology, principles from Western Price, among many other things that I learned on my own, even with my dog Nikki when I was working with her that I was seeing. So some of it is frequency based. So it can be sometimes around certain things that you can do food wise that you might want to work with. Um and really, it was born out of me going and teaching retreats and holding private trainings and things like that, because I would usually bring some sort of super smoothie that I loved, and I would bring everything to make it there so I could share it with the people. And then I would talk with them like months later, and they're like, we're still making that shake every morning. And so it was just like, or they would ask for the recipe of some soup or something. So it just over years, I was, making
Collecting it
notes. And
all.
finally reached out to a graphic designer. So I was like, oh my God, so
So
all
when
the
does it come out? Next month, did you
um,
say?
she actually this week is finishing up some of the graphics on it. She was waiting on me for some of the edits and things like that. So it probably, I mean, I think I can safely say by the end of the year, because here we are.
Okay,
Yeah. But
that's exciting.
yeah, it's real food for real bodies, and just it's just a way to experience some of the recipes. Some are vegan, some are vegetarian, some are meat based, and they're like bone broths, traditional bone broths, and things like that. So because again, everybody's very different. And so while we're here on this planet, we're in a very symbiotic relationship. Ideally, we're in a very symbiotic relationship, and we're aware of that. And we're coming from that place. And how does that work? I'm hearing that song, The Circle of Life, but um yeah, this ideally the symbiotic relationship, and just
Right.
learning about ourselves. And, for from an Ayurvedic perspective, there's some teachings around that, and I feel like for people who want to learn more about themselves, they can just do little things in the way they eat, and it can really change the way
Can you
there's
give us one practical example? I
yeah,
love giving
yeah, yeah.
everyone
So
something to do.
I sure will, yes. So depending on the person, sometimes if you eat red meat, there might be a lot of adrenaline. And I'm not saying don't eat red meat. You can eat grass-fed red meat. It just depends on you and whether or not is it right for you or is it not right for you. And then how does your conscience feel too, about the whole thing. But if if we're consuming something that makes our bodies tense, or we feel a lot of adrenaline from the food itself, then we've got that adrenaline in our nervous system. It can make us very rajasic, or which means very dynamic. So, like for example, this morning I had chai tea. So on this call, I'm very dynamic because chai tea makes me rajasic. I know this about me. I
Okay.
so it's just an example. If I'd had herbal tea, I would be very different. So it could be, if it just depends on how you want to experience life. And also when you're relating to your horse absolutely can feel these things. And so it doesn't mean you have to adopt the way I see this. You can try it on for size and find out if it's true for you or not. So it might be if you had a meal of like some really good organic beans and rice and some fresh vegetables and stuff like that, and you see how does that affect me?
Mhm.
And times of day that we're eating different foods too, because we are naturally on this connected to this circadian rhythm where our digestive fire is stronger during certain parts of the day. And that's a dominant tendency for most people. So you can just see if it's true for you or not. Um, and so those are the kinds of things that I that it's basically how does food affect your nervous system, what
Mhm.
works for you and what doesn't. And, they used to give horses lots of sweet feed, and then they found out, wow, that's way too much sugar for our horses, right? So that's an example of how it does affect our food, affects us as vertebrate animals too. And so that part is just a big part of my life and what even this morning I made this and it's not in the upcoming book, but I can already tell I'm gonna have to do mini volumes of this because food is in, the wonderful yeah. I made some wonderful sweet potato it's really good sweet potato dish with turnip greens, typically Southern, but it has curry in it and coconut milk and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
It's really delicious. So, I just made that this morning, getting ready for our call because that's something that it just makes me really happy to have to create some space to do that kind of stuff. It makes me feel good, and I know that when we are happy and when we feel good, anything that we come to, we it's gonna be a better experience for every relationship, whether it's our relationship with our horse or, with a friend, any or your partner, whatever it is, right? When you feel good and you feel happy, you're gonna have something more to bring to that than if like, God forbid, we all had Snickers and nothing else. Sorry, Snickers, no offense to Snickers.
Snickers and a Coke.
Yes.
You just feel like, "Oh," and then you read the news, and then you drink the Coke, and it's a downwards I totally get that.
It
I
is
really do.
Yes, and do you know this is the thing, like, they did a study years ago with school children, 1st graders, and, they had 2 control groups. One of the groups of children, they gave them sugar, sweet some kind of sweet drink or sweet candy, and then the other group, they did not give them sugar. And in the control group, every time, the ones that had had the sugar within 20 minutes were fighting, like violent. And so, they know that sugar can make you angry. Now,
We all know it, but
yeah, it's a very
why does it have to taste so good?
well, and that's the thing, like, the reason it tastes so good because in nature, we are so designed to love that taste anything that tastes sweet,
Mhm.
because in nature, when it's not refined, it's very nutrient rich, it's very mineral rich. So, like a real cane sugar that's not been refined, it has minerals in it. Or like maple syrup, real maple syrup, it's the darker it is, the better. It has a
Right.
lot of minerals. And our taste buds are designed to tell us this is really good for you. Eat as much of this as you can. It's really good for you if it's nutrient rich. But a refined sugar is a trick. It's been stripped of all of its nutrients. It doesn't have any minerals in it at all. But in nature, so for example, if you love something sweet, and if, from an Ayurvedic perspective, if you are, and we are totally off now, but
I
I
know. Sorry, everyone. We went down the
no,
nutrition path.
I did it, and because I can and I love it because it matters. So if you love sweet, that is that Vata type or tendency within the school of Ayurveda, that teaching, which is part of what I'm doing here. It is very much it's very pacifying for a Vata person to eat something sweet. So it's your body asking to come back into balance. So what we want to do is we want to find something sweet that has not been refined. My favorite is unheated honey. So if you can find a local
Love it.
yes, and it's so good for you for so many levels that if it hasn't been heated. It
Right.
has a lot of enzymes, you can put it if you're stuck somewhere. I was stuck in a canyon and I had a knee injury, a deep wound in my knee, and, there was a registered nurse there, but all I had was raw honey, so I put raw honey in it, and she looked at it the next day, and she's like, "Oh my gosh," she's like, "This looks amazing."
Wow.
So yeah, yeah,
You're a
so
wealth of information, I can tell. We all need to know Gloria. So I wanna sum up the nutrition part because everything you said really comes to in this group in Leg Up Coaching,
yeah,
so many people come back to nutrition and they want a plan. And what I say to everyone is there is no one plan, and you've really just said that. What you're telling us is raise your awareness, listen to your body, and you will find your rhythm. And also, many of us are going into 50s, 60s, older, you just maturing, and
yeah,
it changes.
yeah.
So it's so nice to hear that what we're putting out there is, being
Oh,
taught by the people with the science.
Yes,
Um,
we're all human and we have to, unless we're doing a fast on purpose, we have our what we're putting in our bodies.
It
It's
matters.
it
And when you're
abs
dealing with a 1,400-pound animal, that's why I don't mind that we went off on health because personal growth, health is such a part of it. I mean, everyone who is around horses wants to feel strong, wants to feel healthy. So this is
Yeah.
great that you teach all of this. Um, one of our big things that we talk about in Leg Up Coaching is morning rituals because I'm a big believer in how you start your day. So do you have any morning rituals that you could share with us?
When I first wake up, I know that it is really important to train ourselves to be grateful. So the first thing, no matter what else is going on, I'm thinking, ideally, I'm finding what I can think about to feel good about in that moment. People I'm grateful for, or things I've been influenced by that I'm grateful for, or my bed, or whatever it is. I want to find some form of connection and gratitude and thankfulness. Um, and so over the years, my morning rituals have changed, and from a very a 2-hour yoga practice every morning, starting very early morning. And, it has evolved over the years. But one of the things I know that we all can do that really does help to connect both of our hemispheres of our brain, left hemisphere and right hemisphere, and it's really important that we be balanced in both hemispheres. One part of us is our intuitive knowing, it's our connection, it's our guidance. And another part is our rational mind, our logical mind, the part that loves math, that wants to do math. So
Is there such a part?
I don't yes, we're actually stronger in what we say. We like to live in one but, if you're gonna the left hemisphere is the bad neighborhood. That's the neighborhood if you find yourself always over in the left hemisphere, like, it's the it's you want to be more connected to connected to whatever it is that you believe sent you here or what you wanna be in the world or what you wanna be for yourself or someone else. That's usually, that's in the place where we just love, we just love. So if you want to help to balance those two hemispheres of morning ritual that I find myself and the more we practice anything, the more we can feel the effects of it if we notice and if we listen. So when we bring our left palm and our right palm together, it helps to connect our two hemispheres. And when we close our eyes, we're able to sense more from within the effects of whatever it is that we're doing. Because we've taken away some of our sensory information, we can go into more of a feeling mode. Typically, you don't have to close your eyes, but you can. But those are some of the things as far as morning ritual. I feel like for me, over the years, as I was, oftentimes I was traveling, I wasn't in the same place. So we do need our morning rituals. We do need a lot of something that's like a touchstone
Mhm.
for each of us. So it can be, maybe it's a book that you look at each morning or that you journal each morning. Those are all Hal Elrod. He studied this at great length and he wrote a book called The Morning Miracle, and he talked about these
Oh,
5 things.
yeah.
Yes. So if you think about it, it's like these are all things I named several, right? Meditation, where you're just in silence. But if you bring your palms together, it's gonna
I
help
love that.
2 hemispheres. So, you don't have to be, religious. You have a nervous system, you have 2 hemispheres of your brain, and
Mhm.
when you bring those 2 together and
Medicine.
And when you close your eyes, it quiets your mind. And so, the our our egoic mind has a lot to say, but kind of if you think of it like our higher self or higher knowing, it usually doesn't have necessarily lots of thoughts. It just is, and it's usually pretty happy. And so I know we can all get stuck in our egoic suffering. No, I shouldn't say all because there are some people who I think who don't ever, 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 because they've trained themselves not to. They've taught themselves not to. But if we just recognize, okay, happiness is the way, and if and we know we're in a time right now where it's almost like you should not feel happy, but it's not true. That is a trick.
Correct.
Happiness really is the way. It's just not you wanna be kind of in touch and also find a way to find your own inner happiness, and it can look different from someone else's, but that's really what the morning practice is, any of those, we're going toward that, right? That we don't cause ourselves harm and we don't cause anyone else harm. Ideally, we're not creating suffering, we're not participating in suffering. And so it seems like in some ways, that the request of how to do that has been heightened now. And just to how to use your own discernment, not someone else's discernment.
Mhm.
I think that's really important right now. And so whether you so for morning rituals, some of us we feel connected when we journal. Some definitely, sitting in silence. You don't have to call it meditation. You can just say, I'm just going to be quiet for a minute and just sit. And then also, I don't think it ever hurts to make requests to the universe or God, right? It never hurts to make requests.
Stay connected.
Yes, yes. And I for your horse people, I was thinking about how to say, ask your horse something that's easy first. And I did want to share that. And because that is going to help build your horse's confidence, it's going to help build your confidence. You ask for easy first. And so you could just say, I asked for easy first today, just as a reminder, right? And
Love that.
that way you're coming with, you're in a more receptive place because everything is happening through our nervous system. And so if we're trying to get it right and you can feel the energies like pushing out more if we talk about it from the way we can sense energy from within ourselves. Sometimes our energy can get softened and move inward. Sometimes it can expand outward. We really need both and we need to be able to access both. And so we need to be able to access that for ourselves, for our horses. And then when we're working with our horses this way, we can help them access it from within themselves as well. Um, and that, it can be, you can say, you ask your horse for something that is easy for your horse. That's just very easy. And then you can just wait and then ask for something that may not be as easy. And no matter what the result is for that, I would say, and I know, you could, I know some trainers, they might have a lot to say about this, and I respect them as a trainer. So this is not me trying to get in their business at all. It's only helping your horse and you have a somatic education conversation. So you start with easy,
Mhm.
then is easy for your horse. Then you wait. Then you ask for something that might be a little more challenging. Then you could go back to easy again. And
Okay.
so that your horse is feeling good about the situation. You're feeling good about the situation. No one's pushing anything. You're growing, you're staying soft. You're not getting rigid. Your horse isn't getting tense and rigid because they don't either they don't have a motor plan for what you're asking for one. Usually that's it. Sometimes people might think, "Oh my gosh, this horse is so difficult." Well, that's a whole other topic, right? We could just say, "Come back to what's easy again." You wanna start with easy and end with easy because it really sets you up to feel good about your horse gets to feel good about themselves, and the same is true if I'm working with someone somatically and they've had injuries, and even if they haven't had injuries, I'm gonna start with what is easy,
Mhm.
the most accessible, because that we wanna work with what your brain wants to do. And so in this case, I'm saying it's a way for you to start to think about how to work with what your horse's brain knows how to do and how that can set your horse's brain and their body up for better communication so that when you are asking them for something that's more challenging, you've already positioned everything to be in a place that it's gonna be more accessible for them
Mhm.
because when we're trying to get something right, our muscle spindle fibers get tight. It's an excitatory response, and it's true for all of the vertebrate animals. And so I know that, we're all doing our best with the horses. And really, when you had asked me what one of the things I think was about my mission, it really was like, I was like, I think a lot of horses are really going to like this. It's going to make a lot of horses happy. I didn't see the personal development. That was me being able, growing into it. That was where all of that comes in. So, yeah.
I love that. Well, ask for easy first. I think that's like our overall, but everything that you teach, Gloria, can be applied to the our dogs, our horses, and ourselves. That's another part of your magic. It's
Yes,
not one group, it's all of us. Ask
absolutely.
for easy first. So one of our book club books was about micro steps.
Uh-huh.
And she taught us not everything. Like if someone wants to start a yoga practice and someone says, "Well, at least do an hour and a half." For some people, that can be the downfall. Whereas if you start easy and do one pose a day and build on that, so it's coming at us from all directions that
Yes.
do methods that work for you.
Yes, it's very important. It really is. From truly from a brain science perspective, it is how we can learn and how we really get feedback from our own bodies. And that's the part that, the minute we were put into some expectations, we started to lose touch with our own feedback in our own bodies. And even, like different different clothing we've worn over the years can create sensory motor amnesia too. We don't feel as clearly, and even when we blanket a horse, that it can create a level of because they have to turn off that feedback that something's touching their entire body. And so their sensory system, it will change, it can habituate from so it's kind of this endless thing, but it's really beautiful as the practice of it is beautiful, but and also the philosophy of it, I think, is can be far reaching. So, like for a dog, we're not gonna meet your dog and say, "Okay, let's work on your personal development."
Right.
We're gonna say, like, if your dog, for example, has, hip dysplasia, if they're losing some of their mobility, or if your dog has separation anxiety, um, or they just seem they're nervous a lot or anything like that. Those are more extreme examples of how somatic education for your dog, how you can learn to work with your dog in ways that are really easy for you and easy for your dog, and it helps your dog regain better control and use of their mobility of their bodies. And it's really very, it's really nice because it helps us all keep our mobility for a lot longer. And
Mhm.
um and that and so side effect of that could be for some people, one veterinarian told me, she said, "My dog has never let me leave the room. I've had him 6 years, he's never let me leave the room because he had separation anxiety." But, we did a lesson, he didn't have it anymore, it's completely gone, he let her leave the room.
I'm thinking of like 5 friends who want to speak to you right now. With separation anxiety, COVID has really brought it out in a lot of homes because everyone was home. Now they're going back and animals are freaking out.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Because we want to, we're all learning how to regulate our nervous systems and we co regulate nervous systems. But in this case, you're working specifically with your dog's sensory motor system. And so the rest of it, you're just helping your dog be more confident or yourself be more confident or your horse to be more confident. And that happens as a natural effect when we have better control of our movements and we know it on this, you could think of it like a very animalistic level. You know you have a better control of your body, and that builds your confidence. It just so your horse will be more confident, even though we're not giving them 10 steps in how to be a more confident horse.
Right, right. We just like to do everything's 10 steps to this and 5 steps to this, but
It is,
right,
yes. Yeah, well, when you
we can
ask
feel it.
yes, I know when you ask about the morning ritual, you're right. I mean, I heard someone say it's like a parenthesis around our day, that one side of the parenthesis is our morning, what we do first thing in the morning, and that other parenthesis is what we do before we go to sleep. And
Absolutely. I'm huge on that. It's so nice to hear you beat the drum because I know everyone listening is like, "She says it every day," but it changed my life. It changed getting up early changed my life, and rituals changed my life because when the manure hits the fan, at things out of control, those rituals help me come. It's not that I stay calm all the time, like, that's what meditation, I resisted for so long, and now that I meditate, I think, "How did I even survive without it?" But it doesn't make me walk around in a Zen state, it helps me handle whatever comes my way.
that
So,
is a mm,
these tools are just amazing. We could talk for 5 hours, and I think we're gonna have to do an interview 2.0 because we have so much more, but I try to keep these to an hour for everybody. Gloria, if people want to reach you, which I know they will, what are the best avenues to reach you?
Okay. My website is called gloriahester.com. It's Hester, Hester. Yeah, gloriahester.com. And there's a little form on there. It's just info at gloriahester.com. And you can email me there. And I would love to connect. And yeah, I want so many good things for you and your animals. And for, that's the thing, right, for all of us, and how do we find our well-being,
For all
and
of us, all of our
Mhm.
animals, ourselves,
Yeah.
you are just such a wealth of information, of warmth, of I know we're gonna be connected for the rest of our lives. I'll be in one of your clinics, so it's super exciting. So everyone watching, I have a million more questions for Gloria, so we may actually do another interview, but reach out to her. HorseClass loves bringing you people like Gloria because there's just like you said earlier, it's like a portal. Once you're in the personal growth portal, it is endless, and
Yes.
that's what keeps life exciting. I mean, I just have to be careful because I should actually be doing work, but I go down a rabbit hole of new knowledge. Ayurvedic, oh, and then I have 20 books coming from Amazon, and my family comes home, and all the cupboards are new things, and but it's
Yeah.
exciting.
It is exciting, and I think we share that in common, and I will say, I feel like I've pulled the most accessible parts from these different areas that are very accessible, like from Ayurveda and body ecology and yoga therapy. The parts that I'm the same way, Jenna, with that, and I've had, I work quite a bit with some people, like I said, for years and years, and we laugh. They're like, "You should own stock," and, who I would say, "Well, I think you can order that book from so and so, right?" And so they have this collection because they are inspired too, and they want to learn, and so I think it's natural for some people. We really love to learn and we love to grow, and, that's one of the things I've just done. I've just pulled from these different areas the parts that I felt like were so glaring to me, that were obvious, because you could study nothing but Ayurveda for the rest of your life, and it doesn't address where everyone is right now in their microbiome, because Ayurveda is thousands of years old, and we did not have the challenges at that time that we have now regarding how to put back our healthy microflora. And
Mhm.
that was one of the things that I was working with Donna. So, and it's true for your horse, right? This was, 20 years ago, no one was talking about your microbiome, but
Right.
that's when I was learning about it. So, now people understand, oh, they need to be creating something that helps put a healthy inner ecosystem in their horse. Because if you don't have that good microflora, and for your dog and for yourself. And so, like you said, it's all these different things. And but I just wanted to take the things that were most obvious to me and bring those forward, because without those pieces, we can do all of the somatic re-education, but if we don't have a healthy biome, we need that healthy biome. And we can be really well versed in yoga therapy, which is wonderful. But, so it all plays its part, because when we learn modalities like somatic education and yoga therapy, they do help us manage our stress. And our stress isn't killing our inner good bacteria at that point. So
Mhm.
stress will kill your good bacteria. So we need both of these things, it to me, it was just an obvious, it's just not just one thing.
Right. We need a Gloria Hester class in horse class. We do. We're just to yeah, I know we could learn hours on each of these. I'm like, "Oh, we should have gone off on that topic," but you're right, it's the whole picture, and the another thing you love, and sorry, everyone, I keep going
You're
because
gonna I'm like,
want me to
I'm
talk
doing it, Jenna. I don't do it
uh,
intentionally. It's
but it's
happening.
so fun. With horse people, our lives truly because we have farms and horses, we really need it's so beneficial that you pull the things that we can apply right away. Part of my coaching that I really pay attention to is it's great to be inspired. It's great to do research, but I want people to apply it. I'd rather you only apply two things, but you really do it than just learn all this stuff and not do it. So you're very inspirational in that you're like, no, here are the bits to do.
Yes, yes.
So
What you're talking about right now, we call it infobesity, where you just take in information, but you're full of the information, but you don't know what to do with it, right?
Right.
So it's like a way, it's kind of that play of information and obesity, and you create this word where you have to come together and you say, what is it ultimately that I'm here for? What is it that I'm here to do? What do I want to do?
Right.
And then ideally we have people in our lives that help us recognize, oh wow, I can do this and this.
Right.
And we don't have to limit ourselves. But it's like you're saying, it is definitely a balance. And that is an area where I absolutely, because I love to learn. So
I love to learn too, but we have to apply it. All right, everyone, Leg Up Coaching. This is Gloria Hester. Please go look her up. You will see her more in Leg Up Coaching and in Horse Class because we love her and we need her. And Gloria, thank you so much for your time. And I will be doing this from now on. I know I love that. Want to bring my two halves together because I live off in this land.
yes. Thank you, Jenna. I love
So
you
much.
so
All
much.
right. Take care, everybody.
Everybody.
Bye.